Like I didn't know what to do. I mean, I could see myself right now. I almost like can be outside my body,
Right.
see myself sitting in that car reading that report and thinking, geez, I just innocently thinking there's going to be nothing to this. And then, how am I going to deal with this going forward?
Welcome to Rising to Resilience, the podcast where we explore real stories of authentic struggle, strength, and ultimately hope and transformation. I'm Kristi Hujik, and I am convinced that resilience isn't just about bouncing back and white-knuckling it. It's about who we become in the process of going through really hard things. Each week, we'll be exploring conversations with people who have faced devastatingly hard heartbreak, loss, unexpected challenges. Yet, even through that pain, they've discovered new strength, they've found purpose, and somehow even joy on the other side. If you are in the middle of a storm right now, or if you're just looking for hope and encouragement for the journey, this is a really good place. Here, my hope is that you'll find perspective and resources and practical tools, but also give you something to cling to, because hope is what it's all about. I'm glad you're here. Let's get started. All right, this is pretty cool for me because I am getting to welcome my sister-in-law, Kristi Hujik, to our conversation today. Kristi and I both married Hujik men. Our awesome mother-in-law refers to us as the outlaws because they're the in-laws and we're the outlaws. And it's pretty cool. Kristi has an amazing podcast, which she hosts. It's called The Ripple Effect Connection. When she realized that I was starting this podcast, she reached out with encouragement and enthusiasm. And immediately I was like, oh, you want to talk? Can we do this together? So Kristi, do you mind taking a moment to introduce yourself? Tell us what life is like right now and some of the work that you're doing.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me. And I love that you're doing this. And as far as what I do, I'm an integrative health practitioner, a level 3. So I'm giving people education around lab, but also health and lifestyle changes. I also worked for Dr. Will Cole for 3 years, who, if you know functional medicine, he is one of the top 3 functional medicine doctors in the world. And that was an eye-opening experience, being able to work with autoimmune patients. So I'm at that higher spot on Maslow's hierarchy of needs right now, where I feel like, my role now is to give back because so many have given to me.
Your work as an integrated health coach is so important, but it's also so personal. Can you share where you were 10 years ago?
Yeah, I think coaching has always been in my blood. I think that's something I've always enjoyed doing, whether it was soccer, whether it was basketball growing up. I think as an athlete, sometimes you're a little bit invincible. You're doing everything right. You're doing all the healthy things. You have great people around you. And I think when I started to feel sick, which was about 2016 was the year that all that happened, I, just wasn't feeling myself and being told you have anxiety and you need a sleeping pill. Going from doctor to doctor to try to get an answer because I'm having these weird symptoms that I'm like, okay, something's not right. And I mean, I'll never forget the day that I basically had gotten an MRI in my brain and my neck, thinking that, okay, well, they've done an MRI in my brain before when I had some headaches and there was nothing. This is going to be another dead end. And then innocently going to pick up the report to give it to my chiropractor so that he could see my neck, and then reading the report by myself in the car saying that I had lesions on my brain that were consistent with multiple sclerosis. So I froze in that moment. I was like, I don't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. I mean, I could see myself right now. I almost can be outside my body, see myself sitting in that car reading that report and thinking, geez, I just innocently thinking there's going to be nothing to this. And then, how am I going to deal with this going forward? Right now that's my immediate attention turned to, okay, all right, we know what's wrong now. How am I going to deal with this going forward? And understanding right away, even without training in the functional medicine world or integrative health world, understanding right away that there was going to be a food nutrition component to this. Right away, my attention turned to, what do I have control of here? And then just, processing it was, I felt like on my end, I was doing okay because there was some sort of relief from a diagnosis. And I think there's a lot of people that would tell you that when they get a diagnosis finally and they do know what they're dealing with, sometimes that does cause a sense of relief. Now, it's what you do about it then is, of course, I just want to know why. Why did this happen? Because to me, I want to make sure it doesn't happen again. I got to know what caused it in the first place.
Yeah.
And so I think those were the places that my brain was going. And the hardest thing was telling people, telling loved ones, because they dealt with it worse than me.
Really?
My loved ones were like, it was a big deal. It was, watching my parents deal with it. And you're like, oh, man, like, I don't want them to feel like this. I'm like, look, hey, I get it. I'm going to have control of this situation. I'm going to have an impact on how this affects me in my life.
So multiple sclerosis is an autoimmune disease. Can you describe what the diagnosis means clinically and then how the work you were doing with changing your diet and addressing your functional health, like what does that do when it comes to autoimmune disorders?
Yeah, I think that, there's usually there's lesions in the brain. They can be in different spots. And so symptoms can vary by the person. I was lucky. My symptoms were not that severe. I would get like a lot of neck pain and I would get a massive sense of burning down my spine. I remember having these symptoms and being alone and being on the road and being in my hotel room and finally deciding one night, this is so bad. I was working for the Golf Channel at the time, covering the U.S. Open in 2016, and saying, I got to drive myself to the hospital. This is not good. I would feel a little bit lethargic, and it would keep happening. I'd feel okay one day and then not okay. The symptoms can really vary from person to person with one of the worst being people being resigned to a wheelchair.
Wow.
But just so you know, there are success stories from that too. There are a lot of them out there doing the types of things that we are doing, which address the reason why this happened in the first place. If you have autoimmune, it's really your body protecting you and everything. And that's where you have to learn that your body's not working against you. It's working for you if you give it the right tools. There's certainly, no matter which autoimmune disease you get, the similarities and the components in autoimmune disease are really universal. They're very universal. We have to address emotional. There's always an emotional component to it. We have to address, what are you doing daily? Are you sleeping? Are you eating? Unfortunately, we have a food system that doesn't really allow us to be healthy in an easy way. What are there environmental toxins? Is there mold? Those are big things that drive these autoimmune issues, and they're all connected. So it can get really complicated, but the body is a system. So when one thing is off, a lot of things are off. But the good news is when you work on one part of that system, it can also have some of the others fall into line.
Yeah. It's interesting to me when you talk about you got your diagnosis and that moment. I mean, I'm sorry that you were alone. That's so shocking. And then I can relate to the idea of like sharing it with other people. You're bringing grief into the people's lives who you care the most about. But then I see what you're talking about when you're like, I knew I needed to take action and I could control this.
Yep, 100%.
What did that give you when you took control over those elements of what your journey was going to be like?
Well, I mean, the two things that cause the most stress are fear and uncertainty, right? And so those two things are in full effect when that happens, right? And so at some point when you can say, look, I know, see, this is the athlete in me that probably helps, right? Is that I am the person who I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to figure it out. I can do this. I've done hard things before. And like in the large scheme of things, eating, sleeping, controlling my mind in a more positive manner, those are controllables. Those are absolutely controllables. And confidence comes from action, right? So that if you can take the action, that's going to lead to confidence. And so the action that even so, like my own health journey is still a work in progress. There's still humps and bumps. It's never straight line. No, I'm not sitting here portraying like, hey, I just did these things and it was a straight upward trajectory. No. But what happens is the confidence of knowing what I know is empowerment in the moment where I feel like I'm not comfortable. I know that I have a way to right the ship.
Mhm.
And it's all a juggling act of getting the body in balance, reduce toxicity, and make sure you're filling your nutrient deficiencies. And hey, when you can do that, you put the body in a position where it can heal.
Am I right in saying that you haven't had a progression of your disease?
No, I've knock on wood. I've had I have MRI, my yearly MRIs. I still do, but I
Right.
mean, the doctor even agreed. Like, I don't really even need the checkups. The thing that stands out to me is I've been in a room full of people with MS, and some of them in not a good place, and I've been emotional about it, thinking, why them, not me? Because there are
Hmm.
people in wheelchairs. But then I look around, and here I am at an MS support group.
Yeah.
And there's pizza, soda, donuts,
Mm.
and I'm thinking to myself, you want me to talk about nutrition, and
Yeah.
that's the food you're putting in
Mm.
front of these people. And so I think there's just so many things that we can do. And so what I would say is just, do your homework, do your research, do everything you can that's in your power. But absolutely, food is medicine, and that plays a role, and that's a great place to
Right.
start.
So you're a very successful college athlete. You've always been very athletic, and your work takes you into a realm where you are surrounded by high performing people. So you've done a lot of work in the Golf Channel as a producer. You've
Hmm.
interacted with professional athletes at the highest level of achievement, and you've seen up close what it looks like for somebody performing at that level to overcome. Do you see things and how they've handled their journeys that you've pulled into your own story?
I think a great example is probably my good friend Gary Woodland, who went through scariest of scaries with a brain tumor, and
Hmm.
watching him deal with all this and just how he's handled it. Like, he's an athlete. He's got the athlete mind, and he's a golfer, professional golfer now, and he's a major champion. And I mean, he's the greatest guy with a wonderful wife and family. And watching him go through all of this, him and I
Hmm.
exchanged many text messages about this. And I know he's going to win again on the PGA Tour, and I can't wait till
Hmm.
he does, because the what he's come through and his attitude through it all, that's the reason why he's able to do what he still does. It's his
Hmm.
attitude. It's the attitude he has, and he embraces help and support and connection, which I think is really big in these times. And so, I mean, he's really inspired me, and I every time he speaks about it, I cry, and I tell him all the time, I'm like, gosh darn it. Like, he just went in the Hall of Fame at Kansas, and that's the school he loves. And I watched his Hall of Fame speech, and I was like, man, you had me crying again. Like,
Yeah.
it's unbelievably emotional and real. And anybody who's been in, I mean, his situation is very different from mine. I don't want to compare the two, but there are similarities. When you get that diagnosis and you kind of know, I mean, his was really dramatic symptoms and really life-threatening. But like, watching him go through it, like, he's a real-time example that I would tell anybody, if you want some inspiration, go look at that story.
Yeah. You mentioned when you were talking about Gary the importance of community
Mm-hmm.
and relationships and support. You offer that for your clients when you're
Mm-hmm.
helping them navigate through it. What have you done for you yourself of figuring and all this out?
Yeah, and I think for me, it was like, with the physical stuff was obvious, but I don't think the nervous system stuff was as apparent. So for me, it took one time. I will never forget this. Andrea, who works for Dr. Cole, who ended up being my boss, but at the time I was seeing her as a patient because
Yeah.
I saw Dr. Cole for help. And Andrea saying to me, talking about the nervous system one day, and I said, well, the good news about me is I don't really stay in one place for very long, meaning I might get upset about something, but I don't stay there, right? I don't stew in it. And then her saying to me, you need to own your own trauma and journey. You need to own it. And it just triggered me of like, this is a missing piece. The nervous system is where I've been focusing for the last 3 years, maybe,
Uh-huh.
and it's life-changing.
You talk about Andrea's words, allow the feeling to stay longer than you're comfortable with. Can you talk about what understanding you gained when you took the time to
Yeah.
do that practice?
I guess I had always felt like, what right do I have to complain? I'm not like some of these
Mm.
other people I've met. I mean, I've seen some of these people with MS. Their life is
Mm.
completely changed. But in that moment to say, the rest of the world doesn't matter. This is what you went through and you are going through, and that's what you need to focus on to heal,
Mm.
not comparing it to someone else. So one thing I had to deal with was judgment. The judgment I always had of myself, the judgment in sports alone, the judgment that maybe my dad had, when I was doing things when I was younger, being an only child, there's trauma that comes with that. That just is inevitable.
When you say judgment, like feeling judged, feeling that people
Judging
were
myself, others judging you, coming from a place of question versus judgment are two different things. And if I'm judging and saying, well, my body's failing me, or me asking the question, what is my body trying to tell me? Like, there's a big difference in those. There's a big difference in the way you come at things. Your own awareness has to come first before there's any change.
Or what would you say to somebody who's listening to this right now and feel like there's nothing I could do? I just feel stuck. Where do they go?
The first thing that has to happen is you have to have a vision of an alternative reality. If you can't see yourself as a healthy person, you're not going to be a healthy person. You have to have a vision, just like we do in business, right? The why is your foundation of everything. And if your why is someone comes to you and it's my why is to lose weight, it's not going to last. What happens when you lose the weight? Then what happens, right? But if your why is I want to be active enough to play with my grandkids, that's a why, right?
Yeah.
Lose weight, that's not a why. I want to lose weight and be a healthy person because as I get older, I want to thrive, not survive. Put it on the refrigerator, put it wherever you need to see it, have a bracelet made, whatever you want. But that's what you come back to when you feel like this is difficult and this is too tough. I have a vision. This is what I want my life to look like. So I think that sounds so simple, but it is like the most powerful thing you can do when you're starting.
When you think about yourself today, 2025, versus the woman who you were, let's say, in 2015 before your diagnosis, what's different about you? I mean, obviously your training and all those things are different, but what do you recognize in yourself that's shifted?
I think the biggest difference is just more positive all the time.
Yeah.
And I think just kinder to myself.
Yeah.
And always empathetic to others because I've sat where they've sat, but just the ability to not come from a place of judgment is it's like a weight lifting off your shoulders when you're asking your body what it needs instead of saying, why are you not doing what I need? It's different. It's different to feel like that. It's different to be at peace with whatever happens if you're doing all this too. So I think that those would be the biggest things. I learned a lot from Mimsy, our mother-in-law, I think.
Well, we should all just acknowledge that we hit the jackpot when it came.
We did. We hit the mother-in-law jackpot. And I mean, I think of what she's been through and the attitude that she brings every day. And, Sharon, you'll relate to our favorite expressions of grin and go for it and fun, food, and frolic and all of the great Mimsy-isms that we have. Like, I feel like that was not an accident that I met the Hujik family and Alex and Mimsy before this happened, because where would I have been if I didn't?
Right.
I don't know. Would I have dealt with it as well? I don't know. But having that support and that connection and people, who are so positive, like that, it's just a help. And that's God, that's God putting things in my path when I've needed them the most. So I feel like that continues every day. It's a place of gratitude that you come from.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big shift, a big deal to be grateful for what you have, not envious of what you don't have. It can really change the path that you're on just from shifting that mindset.
Yeah, right.
A little bit.
So you recognize these dots that were connected and you say like that was God. Has your faith been changed through this journey? Is that a piece of this?
Yeah. I think so. I think it's a reaffirmation because when I went through my divorce, I was a little bit sour of how I felt viewed by the Catholic Church. And I've learned from the body code and the energy code that there were obviously things I was uncomfortable with in my religion, right? I'm way more firmly planted in my faith than I probably was before. I think I was a long time ago. And
Yeah,
then I
yeah.
think it shifted. It shifted, and it took me a while to find my way. And I think that that has helped tremendously too. And it's just having the spirituality, the faith, I do think that makes a big difference.
Yeah, just engaging in something bigger than
Correct.
me with awe.
Yeah, I would agree.
I talk to so many people and every different walk of life, but they have that same sense of like, I have this renewed understanding that there's something beyond that
Yes.
has a new meaning to me. You went through a really significant traumatic experience physically, but the growth that you've had since that trauma, what it's opened up in you and the clarity of purpose and everything like that, it's very, very interesting to me. Because obviously this terrible thing happened,
Mm-hmm.
but without that terrible thing, you wouldn't.
100%. I would say that at the moment, we think some of these things are the worst things that have ever happened to us. But I can go back and say some of these things that were awful when they happened, I wouldn't be where I am without them. If I didn't hurt my knee, growing up or in college, would I have been the player I was, or would I have been as resilient as I am? That MS diagnosis, you could argue, is one of the best things to ever happen to me because I learned so much about myself. So if you can then turn something that looks like a negative experience or the most negative of negative experiences into a positive growth standpoint, make yourself better for it, and advance and grow, then I take that every day.
Well, and you said, I've done hard things before. It wasn't like you were like a babe in the woods and all of a sudden you were handed this terrible setback. Yeah. Each one of those small incremental losses, which at the time feels like the worst, most significant, heaviest thing, because it is up until that point, right?
Yep.
But as we just keep building our nervous system, building our capacity to problem solve, building our resilience. Each one of them then prepares us for, it's not like we want more hard things, yet we're going to be ready for the really big curveball that life is throwing.
Right. There's a support group that I run that all it is accountability. And what the person does, they send me a text of all their wins that day. Like what went well. They send me a report at the end of the day. What went well, what didn't go well. And I also send them mine. Every day is not perfect, but the accountability and the understanding that there's someone there with you going through this day after day, that alone helps people.
Yeah. Well, and the act of sitting down and processing, hey, what went well today? Moving it into your prefrontal cortex to be like, okay, let me assess. Let me make these anchors of like, that worked. That didn't go so well. But wait, I did that better yesterday. I'll do it better tomorrow. Like that, the processing of a day is pretty powerful.
It's effective. It's simple but effective. Yes.
So if someone's listening and hearing this conversation, and I can't imagine they're not inspired by your story because your story is really inspiring, not just the personal resilience, but also the systems that you created to help other people going through it. Because you really have built a support network and the resources and the accountability and anything that somebody who's like, yeah, I kind of feel like I could use some help here. You have those resources available. If they're listening and ready to make those first steps towards healing, where should they start?
If you're looking for coaching, I've got a webinar coming up helping people set their health goals for 2026. By the end of the webinar, you'll have a plan. Now, do you want a coach to help you with that? That's another step. But step one, I think, is sometimes it takes people to listen to some of these things and hear them a few times before they really click in, like, I want and need some help. So I always say take advantage of what's free to you first, right? And there's always a level of support for everybody, I think. A direction, something you're comfortable with. There's group programs. There's one-on-one support. It just depends on the level you want it. And I think that's just something you sit with yourself and ask your body, what do I need? And just understanding it does not have to be that way. It is not automatic that you feel like you can't move and you're creaky and cracky in your old age and that's the way it's going to be and your hormones are going crazy and that's the way it's going to be. That isn't normal. And things can be different. So I think it's just assessing that and then reach out. I'm always happy to answer questions. I answer them on social media. You can email me, Kristi@KristiHujik.com. I do free 15-minute discovery calls with people too to help them assess what's right so that you don't have to make the choice on your own of like, oh gosh, I don't know what I'm going to choose. those calls can help sort that out so
Yeah.
that you can reach out for that.
Yeah. I just feel like if you're wondering, like, then give yourself permission to find out. Answer the question. Find out more. See if it's a good
Yep.
fit.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kristi. Thanks for
Yes.
hanging out with me today. It's good to talk. You make the Hujiks look good. You're a good asset for our crazy clan, and I'm grateful to see you healthy, see you thriving, see you having overcome so many things. It's really special. So thanks for sharing your story today.
Yeah, and thank you for all you do and that you are doing with this. Keep shining your light, Sharon.
You got it. I'm in. Thanks, Kristi. Thanks so much for listening to that fun episode. Kristi's story reminds us that sometimes the hardest diagnoses become the doorway to the deepest healing, physically, emotionally, even spiritually. If you're walking through uncertainty or fear in your own health, I hope her story gives you permission to take one small step, to advocate for yourself, and to believe that healing is possible for you too. If this episode encouraged you, would you take a few seconds to rate and review the show? Your support helps these stories reach other people who need them. And if you know somebody who would be encouraged by listening to this, please go ahead and share it with them. You can connect with Kristi at kristihujik.com or on Instagram at wholehealthkristi. And as always, remember, resilience, it's not about bouncing back. It's about rising, stronger, softer, and more rooted than ever before.